My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Rouse.
And you're watching Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
That would be the time. Sorry, I didn't.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Oh, and this year at Portland Retro Games Expo, we are talking about the WarioWare series of games for all manner of Nintendo platforms.
Yeah. Before we get started, since we have a group of people here, I thought this would be fun. Because everybody can do a Wario impersonation of some strength and stripe. So I want to do like a 3, 2, 1 and get the whole room to do a Wario noise. And it's just going to be the most unpleasant thing. And we're going to use it for movies about demons. So I'm going to go 3, 2, 1 and then everybody's best Wario. Okay? 3, 2, 1. Wario! Excellent. Love it. And it's just noise. He's so good. If you don't think we're going to talk about just Wario in general, like Wario generalities, you got another thing coming.
Yeah, most of these pages are blank. It's just drawings.
Yeah, just drawings of Wario. It's just
mostly tasteful names.
There's like Mr. Kole Wario, Mr. Kole Wario Jr. There's all these. Because he's women want him and men want to be him.
Yes.
But let's actually talk about the games and move into a Wario space.
Yes, let us bring ourselves into this headspace of gold coins and farts and everything base. Yeah. This is ridiculous. That is the best possible compliment you could get. That is what Satoru Iwata said about WarioWare Smooth Moves in an Iwata asked. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is a silly series of games, which Nintendo is not always that. Mushroom Kingdom is silly, but there's an internal logic. And WarioWare is very ridiculous and absurd, kind of from head to toe.
Yes, tip to toe. No. It is ridiculous. WarioWare itself is this expression of ridiculousness because literally anything goes in this series, which is made up of these collections of microgames. These mini games, those things that are smaller than regular games. Well, these are smaller than that because you want to sell more of them, which is Wario's entire thing, profit. And these games, you play them for 5 or so seconds, and they're strung together in a row, and they get faster and harder every time.
Yes. Yeah. And so anything you might individually do would not be enough to hold up a game. So the kind of mechanics of these, which is something that I feel like people kind of take for granted, but in going through it for the show, it was really interesting to see where the challenge and where the fun actually lies in these. And there's kind of different steps, I feel like. They each one is like a blast of an image and a command. And what you are doing is a lot of work in a really short amount of time that I think gets taken for granted. You are interpreting the word, you're interpreting it in relation to the image, and you're interpreting it in relation to your control interface.
And you have to do this, not just in under 5 seconds, but leaving yourself enough time to actually execute what the game wants you to do.
Yes, and again and again and again. So it has this, something that would be fatiguing if it wasn't so well done. This kind of constant state of heightened alert that you have to be in to play these games, where if somebody says pick, that could mean your nose or pick a vegetable or choose something, and you are quickly, it's like almost a game about words in a real weird way. It is a game about interpreting commands as quickly as possible.
And sometimes, it happens to me when I play it, happens all the time. We have this set up at the booth, just like the panic when someone's like, what do I do?
Yeah.
It said haze. What does that mean? Like, no, it's not referring to the 2007 first-person shooter. It's referring to, say something mean about this person. It gives you the answers.
Yeah. So you're reading very quickly. It's that kind of quick comprehension, which is kind of the basis of the game. Yeah. The interfaces vary widely as well. So again, not only are you figuring out what to do, but how to do it. Something like pick could be on a controller, could just be moving your cursor and pressing A, but on a Wiimote, it could be doing this. And that could be picking a vegetable. So you're kind of going through a surprisingly complicated series of things for something so simple.
Yeah, I like how you cleaned that up, how you made it so it wasn't the most juvenile thing where we're going to pick a vegetable. No, the canonical ones you're picking a nose.
Yeah.
That's what they put on all the promo
and
stuff.
We all do it. I don't know, it turned into the mom from Mommy Dearest or something. there, but you know, we've all been there. We've all played a little solo WarioWare, well, analog WarioWare. Yeah, with our nose. So this kind of that interpretation also extends to the graphical style, which is crude and goofy and surprising and meant to make you laugh. There are a lot of micro jokes in this game, little things subverting your expectations. You will accomplish the task, and somebody will strike a ridiculous pose as opposed to a triumphant one, or their pants will fall down, or something like that.
Yeah, or because you are repeating, a lot of these games over and over again, sometimes with heightened difficulty, they will establish a pattern, something to expect, and then the opposite thing will happen, but you still succeed. The example being the eyedropper minigame, where it's going over top of that every time. It's like bloop, drop water in their eye, and then in the final stage, all of a sudden, Cyclops eye beam blasts everything away.
So the dropper has become the drop-id.
Yes.
So to speak. So it's trying to make you laugh, and kind of every element of its being.
Yes.
So the first game, those control methods matter. So we're going to kind of go through those as they change. The game we're covering in detail for the show is the GBA version, the original, which was also ported to GameCube, and is almost the same game. A couple of differences we'll go over. Yeah. But that's all a directional pad and the A button. So very simple.
Incredibly simple. There are people in the audience who kind of did a silent cheer, like a Rocky, when they heard about the Game Boy Advance version. That is a very good one. And as soon as Nintendo saw, how well this worked and it performed really well, they decided, well, this amount of variety we can put into a game makes a lot of sense for trying out new stuff with our new hardware. So what you see between, after these initial games, and until they kind of stopped making these, was when there was a new piece of Nintendo hardware, they would use WarioWare to demonstrate what is cool about the way you interact with that.
Yeah, and this isn't the only series they do that with. That's kind of a Nintendo trope. But this is one of them that I don't feel like gets a lot of credit for demonstrating Nintendo hardware variety.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about those different inputs. Kind of another thing that is standard throughout the game is you have a set number of lives. When you fail a mini game, those run out. So it's a marathon. You're getting through a certain number and getting through a boss fight, which will be some kind of bespoke, longer challenge on a set number of lives.
Yes. And over the course of this, it'll speed up. Sometimes they'll have like little comic breaks, just like, here's an image of one of these characters that we're going to talk about. And you'll also level up, I believe, but that is just
that just means
difficulty.
It just goes faster. Level up is difficulty, speed up is speed, obviously, and those two things will work in tandem.
Yep.
So on some courses, it doesn't go long enough to do both. Sometimes you'll just speed up and then you'll get to the boss fight, but for the final ones, you'll usually get to a level up as well.
Yeah.
Which it'll be variations on old games, but add a difficulty kind of element. So the example that comes to mind, there's one where it is Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, where you're running around collecting the coins, and they'll throw a Mario in there. So you have your little Wario, you're trying to get the coin, Mario's interfering because he's jealous.
As he always does.
Yes.
Yes. And kind of the meta structure for these games, not the micro games, but the titles you buy in the store itself, is to go through these collections of games that are made by these characters inside there. And again, we're going to get there because most of these live shows end up talking about characters.
That's true. Yeah, kind of a list of them. We pick live shows for things we can talk about in 45 minutes, and this is no exception. They're great characters, though. I like the design. I would love to see more done with these. I would like a 9-volt amiibo. I would like a Dr. Krygor amiibo.
Yeah.
Orbulon doesn't get enough credit in general. Orbulon is a underrated fella.
Orbulon doesn't belong here.
We have 16 goddamn Donkey Kong games. We got no Orbulon solo showcases. Ashley. Yes. Ashley's great. I love Ashley. She's not in the one we covered in detail, but Ashley is really good.
Yeah.
I love Ashley, a little goth girl. So let's talk kind of about the origins of this.
Yes, and the weird Nintendo development politics and the strange studios and stuff that this went through. So the basis for the WarioWare games was this set of creative titles that were made for the Nintendo 64 disk drive system over in Japan. We never got that. These two titles, Mario Artist Talent Studio and Mario Artist Polygon Studio, they had you creating these graphical, images, and the animated versions of those would be featured in like little barrages of micro games that people would play.
Yeah. And they ended up choosing Wario as the mascot for these because no other Nintendo character would really fit. They all have like day jobs. They enjoy sports. Like I feel like they have rich and active lives. And Wario was begging for something to do. This makes sense. Also, Matsuoka is noted saying Wario is always doing stupid things and is really idiotic. Can we? Is this a good time to slot in our tight three on Wario in general?
Yeah, I think so. I put him at the end of the character thing, but if this is natural, I believe that is the case. He really is a good fit because for as good as the Wario platforming games are for the Game Boy.
Yeah, those are extremely good. Like if anybody here has not played those, like those are very fun. Like Wario Land games are very good.
Yes. For as amazing as those are, there's only so much you can do inside of those. And Wario's entire deal is that it is as close to the worst possible person that you could get.
Yeah, like an anti. He's like it's so weird that he came out on Nintendo. I couldn't find any support for this, but it feels a little bit like to me them taking a jab at like crude mascots that came out in the wake of Mario.
Yeah.
You know, you'd end up with just like more attitude and kind of like coarser. And they're like, yeah, but what if we have this yellow sphere that farts all the time? You know, like, what if we have this avuncular monster that like just growls at everyone? Like, let's just go whole hog.
What is this mustache? Point here, point here.
Yeah, this is a grotesque purple nose, like a pink nose. Like he's really gross, guys.
What's great about it is, in a lot of media, if you want to communicate that somebody is bad,
have them fart all the time.
Yeah, true.
I couldn't sit through Batman Returns.
Just Danny DeVito farting.
Yeah,
he's propelled himself down the sewer.
Yeah, when you see that like the stained onesie he wears during the entire thing, there are lots of implied SBDs going on in that movie.
What's an SBD?
That's a silent but deadly.
Okay,
right? That's what it's.
Okay, cool. Just took
the penguin comes
I
roost.
figured somebody else wouldn't know what that was. No, but in a lot of media, what they do is they show evil through violence. They show evil through like I'm going to inflict harm on other people, and that I think restricts the range a lot of the time of like how bad a person could actually be as depicted in media. But Wario is greedy, he's slothful, he is piggish, he has terrible hygiene, he's in it only for himself, he exploits his friends, like all of these just terrible unwholesome things.
It's everybody at Nintendo's like worst roommate, like all conglommed into a thing. And consequently, I think, and we're doing goofs, but he's one of my favorite Nintendo characters, like in a walk. Like I think Wario is great, just because it feels very disruptive to sit down and play a Nintendo game and just have this like monster.
Yeah.
This just like gross little guy. He's extremely good.
This little goblin.
Yeah. And then if you're like, show me something in a sexy Wario, then you get Waluigi.
Yeah.
So it's he's like a lither, more like aerodynamic Wario, So the whole gamut from Wario to Waluigi. So we should also talk about Wario's name, just real quick.
Yes.
Which is a pun in Japanese for bad or evil. Is Waru.
Yep.
And that is, I believe that's don't kill me if that's wrong, but that's why he's called Wario, because it's a pun for bad Mario.
Yeah, and there are conflicting origins about Wario himself, whether or not it's the product of Mario's hat flipping upside down. In one of the Yoshi's Island games, you see baby Wario, which doesn't seem like it ought to be. He probably would have been taken down by the river.
He was rescued from a sack. There's also, I love little Wario too, when he turns into small Wario during the platformer games. He's got that little like buzz cut, that haircut that they give kids when they have lice all the time.
Oh yeah.
Like it looks like he's
little baby Chuck Liddells.
Yeah. I say that as a little kid who had lice a bunch when I was little, so I'm not throwing shade. Like I had a bunch of friends, we just kept passing it back and forth, like we were rallying at a badminton match. So Wario is the perfect fit. And when they're making the first game, their goal was, let's make something Nintendo wouldn't make. Like, let's do something that is contrary to a Nintendo game. And I think they succeed in that. It does not feel like a Nintendo game at the time it comes out.
No, and one of the reasons it feels that way is because of the way they started developing them. This isn't the case now because production has gotten more complicated. But back in the day, for the first couple of these, every micro game was drawn and coded by a single person instead of separating out art assets and animation and coding and things like that. They didn't divide labor. One person had responsibility for this.
Yeah, and it was also a very free environment. Like, anybody could pitch a game. So they would have a whiteboard or like a board with Post-it notes, and you could say, like, toothbrush question mark, and like put that up, and anybody in the staff could pitch it. It was very open and free, which is not always the case.
It wasn't even just people on the WarioWare team,
Yeah.
by the way, either. Like, people from other divisions and other studios in Nintendo would like swing by and sneak their Post-it note up onto the wall.
What if a baseball? Or something like that. And it would just that would be done. Shoot, print, game. They didn't expect this to be successful. It does feel risky. It's a weird game, and there wasn't anything really like it beforehand. But it was. It did really, really well, and it became kind of a mainstay for a while.
Yeah.
We are past the twilight of the dawn of Wario, but like for a while they were consistent. You got WarioWare.
Yes. Yeah. Now the original WarioWare micro games, that wasn't a Z, it was a $sign. The pronunciation was one of the last games to be developed by Nintendo R&D 1. This is the studio that was kind of headed up by Gunpei Yokoi, guy who developed the D-pad, kind of the guy behind Metroid as
Game
well.
Boy.
Game Boy.
Yep.
Virtual Boy.
Yeah.
I don't say it as a joke. He really
Yeah,
was. That's
he
what
did
got
that,
him
yeah.
counts.
Yep.
And after that, they moved this over to Nintendo Software Planning and Development studio, also known for Rhythm Heaven, which this game shares a lot with.
Yeah, which makes tons of sense. The characters seem like Rhythm Heaven characters, and Rhythm Heaven games feel the same.
Yeah.
Which is another series that's very dear to my heart. This is my favorite stuff that Nintendo can do.
Yeah.
Is this just kind of oddball stuff.
Yeah.
After the first two, Nintendo Software Planning Development also teamed up with Intelligent Systems to do that. That was part of that whole general team there.
Yep. And they also make the Tomodachi games, which I have never played. They look like they revolve around the Miis, and I just have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get into a Mii, even though one of the Iwata Ask things talked about the Mii being tied to the development of this as well.
Yeah,
I
it was
don't know
like
all the details,
it
but
was like the creation system for the Miis was this weird philosophical thing that Nintendo opened themselves up to.
in the making of Smooth Moves.
Yes.
So when they were making, so if you like Miis, which like Miis are fine, but if you're like real into Miis and you're like in those games, WarioWare is to blame or thank, depending.
Yes, because you can make your own little dude. Eventually, Nintendo consolidated all of the SPD software planning and development, along with some other teams, to make just this massive entertainment planning and development team. Blah blah blah. It's a bunch of stuff. The takeaway here is there hasn't been a WarioWare game since that happened in like 2015. It just hasn't occurred.
Yeah, and we've had systems since then.
Yeah, we've had
Yeah.
1-2 Switch, that indelible thing we're going to be talking about in 10 years.
Yeah, that'll be a live show.
Yeah.
Thing. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, so some of the people who were involved in this and where they kind of dropped off.
Yeah.
Goro Abe's
Goro
Abe?
Abe.
Goro
Abe.
Abe?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reading from a thing, and I've never heard this pronounced, so I'm just going to take that lump on the chin there.
Sorry, man.
Goro Abe, his last credit was as a supervisor on Smash Brothers for the Wii U.
Yes.
So,
Yes, and Yoshio Sakamoto, another person who was involved, his last credit was as a producer on Metroid Samus Returns.
it's actually Retrons. I just wanted to get in a correction, yeah.
Just tell you what, I'll throw you an actual softball later on.
Okay. Samus Retrons.
Returns, I believe. Is what it is.
So, yeah, so these games have their own cast, as we mentioned, kind of consistent characters
Yes.
that feel very Rhythm Heaven. But that just means that they're kind of fun and goofy, and they're impossible to take seriously. Like, I feel like Mario is pretty goofy, but there are also times where they want me to be concerned for Mario. And Zelda has gotten so self-serious. Like, Mario has lost a lot of its playful spirit, or Nintendo has lost a lot of playful spirit with its first-party stuff. And this is where it lives.
Yes.
Now with these guys, where it's like these are just goofy cartoons.
Goofy cartoons that it's impossible to imagine befriending Wario.
Yeah. There's something about Wario. And I don't know.
The long-awaited sequel.
Yeah. But they love Wario. They all work for him, and they like it.
Yeah.
It is not. There's we never see a union come in and shut it down. So they designed in the first game. They designed these micro games for him.
Yes.
But the games that we actually play, it deals with their daily lives, kind of their life outside of the game design factory.
Yeah, it shows them in these weirdly like elite beat agents, or I don't know how to say that word. What it's actually called.
It's retrons.
Yes, it's retrons. Yeah, yes.
it's,
It's weirdly like that, where you see them in some kind of crisis, and you play these mini games, and your success or failure in them will have an impact on like how they're doing in their goal.
Yes.
That's kind of the theming or the chrome around these rapid fire bursts of games themselves.
Yeah. So let's go through the games, and each character also has a kind of a specific aesthetic and mechanic that they're tied to, and these generally hold true for the series.
Yeah.
There's some minor variations. They add some characters as well, but in the first game, these are our mainstays, and they're always there.
So there is an important point of distinction here. In the first game, every character presides over a visual theme or an aesthetic, and subsequently, every character was kind of the master of a particular input style.
Yeah. They'd still have kind of an aesthetic though too.
A little bit.
Yeah. So like that totally go away.
Yeah.
So 9-volt is always Nintendo based.
Yeah.
Like the two Ninja Girls are always kind of like nature
Yeah.
based. So like the aesthetic remains too, but then they also change to input styles. Mm-hmm. So the first one we're going to run to is Jimmy T.
Yep. Short for Jimmy Thang.
He's a guy with a big afro. He loves to dance so much, his girlfriends break up with him. And his games all, which is, that's weird, right? Like, dance with the ladies.
Yeah.
His games involve sports.
His style of dancing, he's just out there Saturday Night Fevering on a disco floor?
With his cell phone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, all of his games take place in his cell phone for some reason, which, like, that seems like a good reason to leave him. You gotta put that thing away. You gotta get that app that makes you put your phone down on a date. Jimmy T.
Is that seriously a thing?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you do it and you set a timer, and it's like, it'll grow a fake tree. And if you pick it up, the tree dies.
Oh.
So you have to leave your phone on the table.
Okay.
So Jim Crawford, I learned about that from him.
Huh.
Actually, the last he was here.
We really don't deserve to go on.
Does it?
No.
What? No, I missed something.
As a
As a
society.
species.
As a
Oh,
society.
okay. I was like, Don't end the podcast over. I didn't invent the app, Ross.
I was speaking broadly.
Okay.
I could do the full on.
Also, the idea is not that bad.
It's not. It really
Actually,
isn't.
I'm going to backpedal even a little bit more. I don't think it's worth ending society over.
I'm just looking for an excuse, okay?
Any storm in a port.
Yeah. Jimmy also brings along his pets. He's got little cats and dogs that dance for him. Most of these actually have pets and little animal helpers. A bunch of little druids, them. And also he has like a family who he brings in. Most of his games involve sports, like we said. Also part of his official biography. His hairdo hides his secret, but he refuses to tell anyone what it is.
So, the mystery that we'll all go to our graves once Kole destroys society without knowing. Next up is Mona. Mona is a plucky high school student who works part-time jobs in addition to working for Wario. Pay her more. But she's always late. So she's in the first game she's delivering pizza, I think.
Yep.
Delivering food. She has a little animal with her, and her games involve everyday kind of mundane activities.
Yeah. So this is where you're going to be brushing a lot of teeth. Plucking eyebrows, shaving. Why did everything go to hygiene?
Because that's what most of the games
Yeah,
are.
it's
Like,
true.
you do a lot of hygiene. And she admires Wario, that's canon.
Yeah.
So, like, she, again, women want him, men want to be him.
It kind of goes back and forth between like a secret begrudging romantic affection and also like just, oh, he's such a great businessman.
Yeah.
He's good at making money. Dribble and Spitz are a bulldog and cat pair. Dribble's the bulldog and Spitz is the cat. They speak with a Bronx accent, which you never hear them speak. It's just, included in that. And their games often have like this sci-fi aesthetic. They drive cabs. I don't see how those two things match up exactly.
It's a Johnny cab.
Oh.
from Total Recall.
Wait, so you're saying dribble and spits aren't real? Yeah. They're part of the thing
It's not
itself?
like that. Like, yeah, one person really liked the Johnny Cab reference. And Dribble has beautiful smile, but gets cavities in his back teeth. That's also canon. So there's a lot of stuff about cavities in these games. 9-Volt is a lot of people's favorite. 9-Volt is great. He's a big Nintendo fan. He likes old games, and all of his games are themed around older Nintendo titles and properties, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later, has a long tail with these games.
Yeah, it goes back, not just to NES, but to things like Game & Watch or their old arcade titles that they do.
Yeah, and he has a friend that he shares things with who's called 18-Volt, which I think is very funny.
Yeah.
That would be like if Cole hung out with Kole. It's very.
Kole will be my son, kind of like a JFK Jr. kind of thing, John Doe.
Yeah.
Yep. But 9-Volt has a dark side. Okay, not everything is great with him. I gotta tell you, just for full disclosure. Sometimes he stays up past his bedtime. Okay?
And he does steroids. Performance-enhancing drugs.
Somebody always looking for shortcuts, 9-Volt.
I know. He's Orbulon is an alien with sunglasses and a cool cloak. He's a cool dude. His games are brain teasers. These are really fun. We have to talk about these games a little bit because up until this point, I feel like we're all within this kind of category, like we're talking about kind of simple things, but these involve a little bit more thinking. These will be like word puzzles and like spelling challenges sometimes and things like, what is the correct spelling? The end boss for this one is a fake RPG where you go through a dungeon and you'll get through and it'll be like defend yourself, and then you'll have a bunch of words. It'll be like shield, shied, shelled, shouled, and you just have to pick it real quick which one means defend. It's really neat. These thoughtful ones are very cool, I think.
Yeah. There are even ones that are like little, not like physics puzzles, but one that trips me up is there's a guy who's hanging on a gear, and you have a cart that you have to push, and you have to very quickly work out
which way the gears will turn.
Yeah, which way
things
to raise him up, not drop him down to his death, one presumes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, remember, like we said, these are coming very rapid fire. Figuring out what to do is hard enough. These kind of take the mechanical kind of burden and make it more like just on you to figure out what to do.
And it's actually very subtle too, because you always have 3 seconds to input the action, but the time before the counter starts does vary. So for these ones, you tend to have a little bit of extra time. They know that they're more difficult, but they don't do it in a way that's very obvious. You don't get a countdown from 5. They don't, but you have a little bit of extra time. It's very subtle.
Yeah. I really wish they would have taken Orbulon and made him the mascot for the Brain Age games.
Oh.
Instead of having Andros,
whole
tile face. That's who that was, right?
Yeah, it was the bad guy from Star Fox.
It was the bad guy from Star Fox.
Yeah. So Orbulon once wanted to take over Earth, but got into a rut in Diamond City. He got stuck. So he gave up and started working for Wario.
Yeah.
Tell us about Dr. Krygor.
Yeah, Dr. Krygor, this one's another winner that I would like to see more of. He is a mad scientist with a bionic head and a Cylon eye.
Yeah, and he in the second one, in Touched, it's all about him having a raging case of the shits. Is his game, and it's about him rushing to the toilet. And I don't understand how, you're pictured over a toilet and doing games better means you succeed. I don't know what succeed means in this case. And then when you fail, what does that mean? There's no rubric for Dr. Krygor's games in WarioWare Touched.
Yeah, the game over is just an ambulance headed to his lab.
Yeah. And then a link to the Wikipedia for septic shock syndrome. It's
Yeah. But his games often. Oh wait, I didn't write that down. What do his games have to do with? Those are the real real pictures, right?
Involve real things like food.
Oh yeah, real world things like food and animals. There we go. This is where you get a lot of digitized photography. Here's an actual dog. Pet his hand. Okay, yeah, there you go. They would replace that with a Nintendog later on.
This Cole's really against launch DS titles tonight.
Why am I against that?
Well, because of the Brain Age and the dog and stuff. It just sounds like you got a bone to pick. So Dr. Krieger is taking flamenco lessons. He wears a onesie, which I like. And he prefers 2-ply toilet paper, going back to that bathroom disaster.
Right.
Yep. Kat and Anna are 2 little ninja girls. They are both very cool. They and real cute. They love nature, and their games are all around revolve around nature in some way.
Yep.
And like Mona, they also have little animals.
Yep.
So, Ashley, which we mentioned, is a tiny goth girl who is excellent, but doesn't get added until later.
Yeah.
So.
And then we have Wario himself. The framing story for the first game is that he's watching the news. He is a greedy Fox News viewer, if that reminds you of anybody. And he sees a report that finds Donald Trump.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were going with that. I was like, what is Brain Age and 10 Dogs?
It's all forming along.
Yeah, what is this? Feel the Magic XXY? What is Kole having a problem with? Yeah, Sprung. But then it turned out it was real life. It wasn't a Nintendo DS launch title.
Right.
What's your goddamn life?
He was watching a news report saying like, oh, video games are making so much money. So he decides, I'm going to get into that racket, but I'm not going to make full games. I'm going to make a bunch of small games so he can sell more and more of them. And so he conscripts all of his friends because designing them is hard, as we will find when we get to WarioWare DIY.
Yeah, exactly. So we're gonna. That's pretty much the game. The first one. We're gonna go through the different things and kind of talk about how the series evolved and then eventually kind of devolved.
Yeah.
And then eventually digivolves in the end. But kind of talk about how it changes, and maybe it makes sense that it stopped because the last couple ones weren't super great.
Right.
So the first one, Mega Micro Games, released for the GBA in 2003. This is the first one, all the stuff we just talked about, and kind of contains all the basics, sets the building blocks for the series.
Yep. Set the story. Later games would completely eschew the idea that Wario is making these games. I wouldn't want to play Mario's micro games. I think he's real boring. I don't think he has the spark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll be about plumbing.
Yeah. He's not a plumber anymore.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Also, he has nipples.
I don't like that he's not a plumber anymore.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that bums me out.
Yeah, if his entire deal is that he is just on call as Mushroom Kingdom's hero.
Yeah, it makes
that makes him
$48
less
an hour and
interesting.
plus pennies. Yeah. Like, that's what I want.
But they scrap all of that. This was financially successful. Became a series starting with the GameCube remake, the one that we're playing at our booth, Mega Party Games. Again, the S on the end of that is a $sign, if you can hear me pronounce it. The idea for it came when Iwata noticed that people were huddling around other people when they were playing, these micro games, when they were playing WarioWare. So he said, well, let's figure out a way to get this up on a big screen as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. And do kind of a multiplayer focus.
Yeah.
For that. So, everybody in the Iwata Asks interview, based on this, makes a big deal about how rushed the production of this GameCube version was. And you can kind of see it. They cut all of the story and framing stuff out. It is just a menu. You just kind of go through the different types of games. You still have the character, but you don't get as much personality to them. So kind of a bummer. It's still very fun because you can play it on the controller on the big screen, and it has more multiplayer modes. For people who are here, if you guys are here tomorrow, we're doing a contest at our booth. We have the unlimited play, where it just kind of goes as long as you can. Whoever can get the furthest in 2 days, we're going to get your shirt size and your email address, and we will mail you a shirt, and the shirt says, Wario is just like Mario, except the M is upside down. In big block letters, like an Abercrombie and Fitch nightmare shirt. Just like one of those ugly human billboard shirts, but also a good message. Like, we educate and entertain.
This fulfills some community service hours.
It's not just
actually.
like, here's 3 boroughs from New York. Like, it's actually something people want to read. So
it's basically the Lenny White, Carl Black.
Yeah. I'm sick of these jokes, so I give humongous hands. After that, they switched it up. We have WarioWare Twisted.
Yeah, I like this game an awful lot. This came out in 2004 on this special Game Boy Advance cartridge that senses rotation. I think there was a Yoshi puzzle game that used it as well. Mm-hmm. The Game Boy Advance was kind of this last era for interesting cartridges, where you had like little rumbles built in, where you had like Boktai with a solar sensor and stuff like that. This was one of those.
Every single one of the booths out there that are like dig through our pile of trash and fill any bag for $1 is 90% Guitar Hero on tour from this era. Like, I mean, that's the DS, but like that same kind of basic concept. Like, here's a piece of plastic that you have to add to your game to make it a game.
Right. There's a cool story for the concept behind this. Kazuyoshi Ozawa, one of the lead developers behind Rhythm Heaven, they were experimenting with this rotation cartridge. And he decided he wanted to mix WarioWare up using this because he thought it would be interesting. The proof of concept was a little software record player that would play music as the system rotated, like the record was spinning. And he would just sit it on a spinning chair and spin it. Chair goes round, chair goes round, chair goes round, playing the music as it goes along.
Yeah, and he just did this for hours. And this is a lot of Ask interview, which if you've ever read any of those, like, they're really informative, but they're like 5 times as long as they need to be. Like, they go in circles a lot. I feel like there's a good half a page of them saying how much they laughed at this, just back and forth. Like, you laughed at it, or you did it forever. I did. Laughs. I couldn't. Was it a long time? Yeah. Laughs. Like, it's just transcribed. It's pretty silly, but it's neat. Like, and the cool thing, if you've never played with one of these, is that it has a physical feedback. Like, it feels like something when you move it. It's very cool. It works, I think, Kole and I don't agree about this. I think it works better on the old GBA, because the laptop one, flipping sometimes you have to flip it pretty harsh, and it's harder for me to see the screen.
Yeah.
But the actual, if you have like a backlit, modded old GBA, it'll play like a dream. Really good.
Really enthusiastic. It's like you're really trying to sell them,
like a dream.
Trying to move some units.
It'll play like a dream.
Yeah. No, I like it because just you would think that's pretty limiting what you can do with that, but that's really no more limiting than just a D-pad. And the ideas that they come up with are pretty inventive for it. Mm-hmm. Wasn't able to revisit this one for the show, but I had a lot of time.
906.
Yep.
Yeah, just letting you
know.
Yep. So, and this is kind of where it moved away from concrete stories, just kind of misadventures around Diamond City, and the characters don't have as big an emphasis on visual theme. It's more about a control input theme. WarioWare Touched is also one that a lot of people played, a very popular one. This is a launch title, a launch window in the launch window for the DS, developed to show off the touchscreen, of course.
Yeah.
In this game, Wario is walking down the street with 2 portable game systems. He drops both of them in the sewers, and then a character known as the Sewer Guru appears with a DS, which is apparently the fusion of those. And Wario takes it and sees the profit in 2 screens with twice the price, which is, again, very clever and self-aware and fun for Nintendo.
Yep. Man, I wish I knew more about the Sewer Guru. I didn't have Wi-Fi when I...
It is a lesser Mike Myers movie.
So this was kind of developed alongside WarioWare Twisted, and they kept all of the veterans on Twisted itself, moved some newcomers to this one, specifically for the DS, and the Twisted team was kind of brought in later on to inject some of the series' humor into it because there was like a lack of communication about like what the tone of these games should actually be, and I think that comes through. Like WarioWare Touched is not that great.
I still think it's fun. It's not that funny.
Right.
Like the actual things you're doing are still fun, but it's not one of the more funny.
Yeah. I don't like the ones where you're like scribbling and circles on it. I feel like those are games that are like Mario Party designed to tear through controllers.
Oh sure. Yeah. We and it'll be many years before we get to Mario Party for this thing. Like, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. Smooth Moves, as we mentioned, Wii U game. This was developed alongside the Wii as a launch title. And this one, Wario finds an artifact called the Form Baton, which is a Wii U remote, or Wii remote.
Damn. A Wii remote, yes.
There's no Wii U remote. And it lets him control microgames using different movement forms.
Yes.
So this also had a really interesting kind of development story because they started making this thinking there's one way someone can hold a Wiimote. And they were feeling really limited. They made tons of games, and they were like, these are all kind of the same. So they introduced this concept based on learning Japanese language public access shows. They had a Canadian who was walking by their booth who worked for them in the company and said, hey, would you want to do this voiceover? And they had him do a series of voiceovers that tell you how to hold the Form Baton beforehand. It was just serendipity. A guy happened to be walking by the window and got hired to do the voice for those things. Pretty neat. But what it means is that before you do a game, the game will tell you kind of what to do with the Wiimote. This is an unpopular opinion. I think that kills the pacing in this game. I think you need to be able to move way quicker than that. I hate the form baton introductions. Like the first 5 of them are very funny, and then I get so sick of it and so angry.
But then you never see them again. Like
Well,
when
it'll tell you the form, but there are 22 of them or something like that. There's a lot of them, so it takes a long time to get through all of them.
Okay.
And they're all done in that very like relaxed pace. Like they're going for an
Yeah.
aesthetic.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but boy, does it kill the game for me.
Yeah. When you're in the flow of it, and I've only ever played this like drunk in the house where I stayed at when I went to college. Like it is a fantastic like we're just kind of fucking around in this house kind of game. That never got in the way for me.
Yeah.
I like this game an awful lot.
I mean, I don't think any of these are bad. It's just like if I'm choosing one.
Yeah. If you're choosing.
If I get to Froggy come a choosing, and this one is specifically made to make you do goofy shit and your friends to see it. So you
Yeah.
do a bunch of embarrassing stuff.
Yeah. One thing we didn't say about the way they communicate what you're supposed to do, they don't say hold the Wii remote upright pointed at the ceiling. They say do the umbrella. It's like it's modeled after like Japanese dance instructions.
Yeah.
Like they don't.
It's dance instructions by way of the tone of the language learning
Right.
thing. It's a real weird thing. But they don't. The first time it doesn't say do the umbrella. It says like hold an umbrella as if a storm were threatening your life. The storm continues to fall. The rain continues. Like it.
Yeah.
It's this very like purple prose thing.
Yeah.
Just so you guys don't think I'm crazy about like I'm complaining like oh it says umbrella. I don't have time for that. Like I understand that's only 3 syllables.
I think that is just it's a very good way to communicate that though. Because
Like an umbrella, yeah.
Yeah, because you really could, just like lose a lot of that sense of speed. Arguably,
Yeah.
It still does, but I think that's
You could lose more.
It's a very creative idea
Yeah.
to communicate that.
We're picking up the pace here. We're running up on time, but kind of beginning the not as good ones. WarioWare Snapped is a DSi-ware game that uses the camera again, showing off that hardware piece, and you make shapes with your hands on there. It's not bad. You have to hold it in like you can't play in bed. Like you have to kind of set up.
Yeah.
The DS.
It was initially going to be worse. They were originally going to use the outside camera on the DSi and have you doing stuff with your hands in front of it. And they couldn't get the sensors to work. They were initially thinking about sending the game with a black backdrop and little
In case you want to
sleeves
sell
for
it
your
on eBay.
fingers. Yeah.
You can take a picture of it and get rid of it because it's
Yeah.
not so good.
And basically, the finger part of fingerless gloves
Yeah.
is what they were going to give you, so it could show up. It's a very slight game. Like it was distributed as DSiWare. You're not going to be getting the full kind of benefit of this, but it's there.
Yeah.
You can get it on your 3DS.
And then largely considered to be the worst one is WarioWare DIY,
Yes.
which came out in 2010 for the DS. DIY means you can make your own microgames with this, which is kind of cool. You use the touchscreen, you draw assets, you can do your own kind of goofs and do your own kind of logic design. Kind of the problem is that it doesn't do a good job of telling you how to play it.
No.
And playing it is not actually that fun. And nobody's uploading these things for other people to play. Like it doesn't really.
You can't. They took down the
Yeah,
services
they took-
where
yeah.
you do that.
Even
yeah.
then, though, even when you could, like nobody
Right,
was doing
right.
it. It's not popular.
Right. Yeah, like the actual interface itself for dropping stuff in and drawing your little dudes, that's all fine. It's just the way that it's separated into these very unintuitive modes is hard to get over. Like the separation of what you're actually supposed to do in any given area is hard to get over. That and making games is a different kind of fun than playing them.
Well, and making games is like super fun, but these micro games are so simple, right? Like I love Mario Maker, like I love making a game, but it's like iterative and a long-term process. This is just like, what if somebody went into a cave and I just have to draw a cave and a person and then just like say, like it doesn't, there's almost not enough there, for it. So this is largely considered to be, this was the worst received of them. With good cause.
Yeah, which is a bummer because it is inspired by Mario Paint.
Yeah,
and
it was great.
Yeah.
And it came out in 2010, so this is 7 years ago. This is, it's been fallow for a while. The technically most recent one, there is Game & Wario, which was a Wii U game. But it's not really a micro games thing. It is much more of like kind of a, each character kind of has a single Wii U related gimmick to it. It's not like you're doing a series of micro games. So it's kind of in the same series, but not really.
Yeah, you're exploring the Wii U gamepad, that gigantic Fisher-Price monstrosity. Yeah.
The real spiritual successor to these are the NES remix games, which come highly recommended. Those I think they were budget priced, so a lot of people ignored those. I think those are very fun. And what they do is they take classic Nintendo games and break them up into challenges, like essentially micro games, and just have you do those. So it's like 9 volts levels, but for a whole game.
Yeah.
And you can buy both of them together, and it's super cheap, and those are very good.
Yeah, very highly recommended. Especially because they don't just work in the obvious NES titles. But
Yeah.
they do bring in some pretty goofy ones.
Yeah,
as well.
balloon fight for miles. Like you're urban champion and this shit.
Yeah. And for as many mini game collections as there are, not too many micro game style things come to mind. The only one that kind of was a fast follow to this was a game called WTF on the PSP, which stood for Work Time Fun.
Yeah.
But that was more of like a wacky.
This is an extremely weird game.
Yeah.
There's this whole like pen clicking part of it. I had work time fun.
Yeah.
I forgot. You just unlocked a memory. I forgot about work. Y'all forgot about work time fun.
Yeah.
So surprisingly, not so much of a legacy other than this NES remix thing. So it's kind of weird. Like Nintendo doesn't let things go. They, popular critique. They've been making the same Zelda for a lot. Up until Breath of the Wild, and that's a fair critique whether you like those games or not. Like they are very similar, right? Like they have the same kind of quest structure. Nintendo doesn't tend to let ideas go like that, but they let this one go.
Yep.
And it bums me out. So I want WarioWare for Switch, real bad.
I just want more stuff to do with my Switch in general. Yeah, I love WarioWare. I was a big fan ever since I got it on the original Game Boy Advance. Huge believer. Played them the entire time.
It's one of those things where, in kind of rounding out and thinking about what's special about it, that uniqueness, even though there's a series and from entry to entry it doesn't change that much, but that's really a part of the value is there isn't anything else that really plays like it.
Yep.
And it is so good for just like picking up for a second.
Yep.
Like people say like I want to play Overwatch. I got 20 minutes to play. I'll play Overwatch. Like what if you got 3 minutes?
You're
that's,
on the go.
yeah, what if you're literally on an elevator? Go. They're great for that. So I guarantee there's hundreds of copies of these games out there. If anybody's not familiar, I feel like things we've done for live shows is one of the more obscure things. You guys should try it because it is a very fun Nintendo property.
An easy way to try it would be to come by our booth number 324, if you haven't been out there. We do have WarioWare for the GameCube set up, and we are running that contest, like we mentioned before. And we're giving out stickers and things like that as well.
Yeah. We are out of time. So we'll let you know that we are, just repeat, we are a podcast, Games Club podcast, and we are entirely supported by Patreon. If you like the show, give it a chance. And if you really like the show at that point, consider supporting us at patreon.com/duckfeedtv. You get a bunch of extra stuff. It is not for nothing that you do so.
Duckfeed.tv is the network of shows that we do, spanning a whole bunch of topics. We're on a bunch of them. A bunch of our friends are here.
Yeah.
My brother's on one. It's all a good time.
And finally, after we leave here, we're going to the Watch Out for Fireballs /Retronauts meetup at Quarter World on Hawthorne. So if you guys aren't too sleepy, come have some beers with us and the Retronauts guys, who are all very sweet and nice.
Yep.
And I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Wow.